The halftime performance of the Super Bowl is such a huge way of exposing your music to the world. Over 100 million people watch. Now let's face it, they're not all pop rock music fans. So you're getting into some homes and you're appearing before people that don't really know who you are. They may not have even heard of you.
In 2007, beneath a stormy Miami sky, one man stepped into the downpour and delivered a performance that would be remembered forever.
It's the best Super Bowl halftime we're ever gonna have. I mean, the idea that I don't care that it's raining, and not only do I not care that it's raining, I'm gonna make the rain work for me.
But how did he get there? After years of battling with the music industry, a fight for artistic freedom, a shifting identity, and personal loss, how did Prince rise to reclaim his crown? This is the story of an icon's rebirth, of the road that led to one of the greatest performances in music history. In the early 90s, the NFL had a problem. The Super Bowl halftime show wasn't must-see TV. It was a bathroom break. Audiences were subjected to marching bands, awkward medleys, and uninspiring themes that felt more like filler than entertainment. The NFL knew it was losing viewers, but the real alarm came in 1992. That year, Fox counter-programmed with a live episode of In Living Color, and millions of people changed the channel. It was a jarring wake-up call. The following year, the NFL decided to do something radical. If they wanted to keep viewers, they had to go big. And there was no one bigger than Michael Jackson. So on January 31st, 1993, in front of over 130 million viewers, Michael Jackson took the stage at the Rose Bowl and changed everything. For the first time ever, more people tuned in for the halftime show than for the game itself. It was more than a performance. It was a moment, a statement, a turning point. That same year, a storm was brewing between Prince and his record label, Warner Brothers. From the moment he signed his landmark $100 million contract, hailed at the time as one of the most lucrative deals in music history, he felt a deep unease. His hand trembled as he put pen to paper. He later recalled it vividly. The contract handed over the publishing rights and ownership of his music to the label.
All major label record deals are heavily weighed towards the record label. I make it this analogy. Going into a Las Vegas casino, you might make $1 million on the slot machines or playing blackjack or 21 or whatever it is you do. You might, but the Las Vegas casino is weighed heavily towards the Las Vegas casino taking your money. It's not an even 50-50 game.
But Prince needed money, fast. Keeping his recording haven, Paisley Park Studios, running around the clock came with a $2 million annual price tag, and he wanted it ready at any moment should inspiration strike. Prince was a machine of creativity. Albums poured out of him.
All the record companies, after Michael Jackson's Thriller, wanted artists to release albums less frequently and put out more singles from the albums, which would be unpaid commercials for the albums when they were played on the radio. But Prince just kept turning out the material, and he wanted to put out even more.
When he delivered Come and The Gold Experience in 1994, he expected them to be released side by side. Warner Brothers accepted both, but shelved the gold experience, worried about market oversaturation.
And when you're working with a massive corporation like Warner Brothers, the wheels go very, very, very slowly. And someone like the Prince, that's so nimble and creative and changing and thinking and revolutionary, it doesn't really suit someone like that.
Furious, he took the fight public. The word slave began to appear scrawled on his face, bold, defiant. His message was clear. Warner Brothers didn't just control his music, they controlled his name, his identity. At the 1995 Brit Awards, with Slave still etched across his cheek, he declared,
"In concert, perfectly free. On record, slave."
Soon after, he shed his name altogether, adopting an unpronounceable symbol. The world called him the artist, or more famously, the artist formerly known as Prince.
How many artists could really create a symbol and be a strong enough brand to actually get away with it? I can't think of many. In fact, perhaps no other artist other than Prince could do that. Because if you look at the great brands of our time, not necessarily musical brands here, but you just look at great brands, we recognize them by their logo. And the thing about getting your brand recognized through a logo is you need to have entered deep into the subconscious of your community, of your society, in order to be able to get away with it. So if you see an Apple, you know it's Apple logo. If you see a swoosh, it's Nike, you know, and there's an instant recognition. That's how brands work. They get into your unconscious mind, and so therefore the symbol acts as an anchor or a trigger for that. And in many respects, that's what the Prince, the love symbol, did for Prince. And only he had the power, the personal charisma, and the creative talent to actually get away with it.
Around the same time, George Michael was fighting a similar battle with Sony, branding his contract professional slavery.
It was all absurd. And it's hard for people who are struggling in a garage band or just make tapes in their bedroom. It's hard for them to have any sympathy for Prince, but he had a point. He had a point. And one of the reasons Prince made 39 studio albums is a lot of them he's throwing out to Warner Brothers as fast as they would accept them to get out of the contract so he could do something new, because his contract was weighed heavily against him. That's just the name of the game back then.
When the dust settled, he walked away, finally in control of his music and his name. He would later say simply, "If you don't own your master owns you." With newfound freedom, in 1996, Prince embarked on one of the boldest chapters of his career. No longer bound by the restrictions of a major label, he took control of his destiny, releasing the ambitious and deeply personal album, Emancipation. A sprawling 36-track, 3-disc set issued under his own label, NPG Records, the album marked a triumphant declaration of independence. It would go on to be certified double platinum, signaling that the purple one was far from finished. Invigorated by the album's success, Prince launched the Jam of the Year World Tour, his first full North American tour since changing his name to an unpronounceable symbol in 1993. The tour was a resounding commercial success, reintroducing Prince to a new generation and reaffirming his place as one of the greatest live performers of all time. That same year, Prince married dancer Mai Tai Garcia, and it seemed, for a brief moment, as if the stars were aligning. Creative, personal, and spiritual fulfillment all appeared within reach. But just as the comeback began to take shape, tragedy struck. Prince and Mai Tai welcomed their first child, a baby boy they named Amir, Arabic for Prince. For a fleeting moment, it was joy, a new life, a new chapter. But almost immediately, something was wrong. The baby had been born with complications, his condition uncertain. As the days unfolded, hope gave way to fear, and then to heartbreak. Just 1 week after his birth, Amir passed away due to Pfeiffer syndrome type 2, a rare and severe genetic disorder. The loss was shattering. Known for guarding his privacy, Prince remained silent in public. Even during an appearance on the Oprah Winfrey Show shortly after the tragedy, he deflected all questions, unwilling or perhaps unable to put the pain into words.
What is the status of your baby, your pregnancy, your...
Well, our family exists. We're just beginning it. And we got many kids to have, long way to go.
Behind closed doors, however, the grief was overwhelming. It's been alleged that in the aftermath, Prince burned all of his son's baby clothes and belongings, as if trying to erase a chapter too painful to bear. That sorrow found its way into his music. In the hauntingly beautiful ballad, Come Back, Prince channels his loss through melody, delicate, aching, and raw. It stands as one of his most vulnerable recordings, a quiet tribute to a life that barely began. While Prince wrestled with unimaginable grief, the world turned its attention to another icon. In 1996, Diana Ross took center stage at the Super Bowl halftime show. Her electrifying performance was met with widespread acclaim. In the days that followed, sales of her latest album, Take Me Higher, surged by 74%, further cementing her legacy as a true legend. For Prince, watching from the sidelines, it was a reminder of what once was and what might have been. A moment of reflection amid a storm of emotion. As the light shone brightly on others, he stood in the shadows, dreaming of a time when the world was brighter and the music was all that mattered. Before the world knew his name, before the purple suits, the screaming guitars, and the genre-defying anthems, he was simply Prince Rogers Nelson. Born on June 7, 1958, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Prince grew far from the cultural epicenters of funk and rock. On the surface, the city may have seemed like an unlikely setting for a musical revolution, but underneath its quiet, orderly exterior, deeper currents stirred. Minneapolis had already given rise to musical icons, Bob Dylan chief among them, proving that greatness could emerge from its snowy streets. But those success stories were almost entirely white. For Black musicians, the path was less clear. The Black community in Minneapolis was small, and while the city wasn't marked with the overt racism of the Jim Crow South, systemic inequalities shaped daily life in housing, education, and the arts. Still, the city had its own quiet rhythm. Scattered jazz clubs, modest rock venues, and church choirs offered glimpses of musical life. For Prince, jazz in particular held a deeper resonance. His father, John L. Nelson, was a jazz pianist, and that sound, fluid, expressive, unpredictable, was one of the first he truly connected with. It shaped his understanding of music's possibilities, teaching him about emotion, complexity, and freedom.
Well, when you come out of jazz, you've got a harmonic and melodic development that's greater than most pop rock. That's the great thing about having his dad being a musician and a teacher and could read music, and his mother being a jazz singer. He's not coming into rock and roll with da 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 da. He's way down the street, more developed than that.
But even with these influences, the scene didn't resemble a thriving industry. For a young musician, it could feel isolating. There were few obvious paths forward, few signs of what was possible. But that isolation could also create focus. With fewer distractions and expectations, an artist had the space to retreat inward, to hone their craft in private. In the stillness of Minneapolis, far from the spotlight, Prince began to build a world of his own. Music offered a kind of freedom that the outside world didn't. His parents separated when Prince was young, and he spent his early years bouncing between homes.
So from a very young age, he had his parents performing and adults around him that were involved in the music industry. And by the age of 14, he already could play many different instruments, including the guitar, the drums, the piano, which really, if you think about that early of a start, being that proficient in that many instruments, it doesn't really surprise that at such an early age he got signed.
He was always the guy when everybody else was taking a coffee break, gonna have an ice cream, going to waste a bit of time. Prince was the one who would keep practicing, keep playing, keep performing. And when they came back, he was still there. When they went out again, he was still there. When they came back, he was still there. And it's that work ethic, that tenacity, that determination to succeed is really what defines Prince as, without doubt, one of the greatest artists in any genre of the latter part of the 20th century and the early part of the 21st.
I listened to all kinds of music when I was young. And when I was younger, I always said that one day I was going to play all kinds of music.
From a young age, Prince was building his musical vocabulary. He paid close attention to the artists who came before him. James Brown's tight grooves and commanding presence, Sly Stone's fusion of funk and social commentary, Hendrix's raw electric emotion, the Beatles' melodic instinct and studio invention. Prince wasn't just a fan, he was a student. He studied their moves, their sounds, their innovations. He absorbed their artistry like oxygen, blending it into something uniquely his own. The revolution was already brewing inside him. In high school, he joined a band called Grand Central with his cousin and a few friends. They played in basements and small clubs, but Prince's ambition was already too big for any garage. He didn't just want to play music, he wanted to control it, every chord, every lyric, every beat. At just 19, he signed his first record deal with Warner Brothers. But even then, he fought for something almost unheard of: total creative control. They called him a prodigy. They had no idea. By 1978, he released his debut album, For You, playing every single instrument himself. Then came Prince, Dirty Mind, and Controversy, each album more daring than the rest. He sang about sex, race, religion, freedom, and he didn't just blur boundaries, he shattered them.
His music brought in so many different people from different, I've spoken about how there's a thing called the grandma factor, that some artists, if they don't have it, they only sell to that pop rock area. They only sell to the blues. They only sell to reggae. But if you can get a good toe-tapping, slightly sentimental song, grandma buys the record. You've expanded your audience. Prince had several grandmas in his demographics. I don't mean he had several slushy ballads. I mean, Prince brought in James Brown funksters, electric guitar playing fools, soul people that wanted to get on the dance floor and cut a rug, and he brought them all to the party.
The world could no longer look away. Prince wasn't just arriving. He was declaring war on the ordinary, and music would never be the same.
I think 1999 is the album, the fifth album is the one that breaks him. I don't think there's any question.
1982, Prince stepped out onto the global stage with the release of 1999, a bold synth-driven fusion of funk, rock, and new wave that announced the arrival of a singular event. The album's title track and the infectious Little Red Corvette weren't just hits, they were declarations. Already revered for his astonishing ability to play virtually every instrument on his recordings, Prince blurred the lines between genres with effortless swagger. Guitars wailed, drum machines pulsed, and his falsetto floated above it all like a prophet preaching dance floor salvation. Then came Purple Rain in 1984, a soundtrack, a film, a phenomenon. With it, Prince didn't just break into the mainstream, he redefined it. Songs like When Doves Cry and Let's Go Crazy weren't just chart toppers, they were cultural detonations. The album sold over 25 million copies worldwide, but more than numbers, it cemented his place as a revolutionary force in music. And it wasn't just on vinyl.
To really break through and to be a household name, one of the ways you can expedite that, you don't have to do this, but one of the ways you can expedite this, which Brian Epstein knew, Colonel Parker knew, is to make films. Being in cinema brings in your own target audience who are pleased by you being on the silver screen and exposes you to another audience which just doing Jailhouse Rock and just doing Please Please Me doesn't give you.
Purple Rain marked Prince's transition into the film industry, where he blurred the line between persona and performer.
There was no evidence that he could make a movie. And the minute it was released, there were rave reviews. I remember one saying, "This is the Citizen Kane of rock movies." And the general impression was, and the line frequently used was, "This is the best rock movie since A Hard Day's Night."
The movie became a box office hit, and Prince was awarded the Academy Award for Best Original Song Score in 1985. In one stroke, he conquered both the charts and the cinema, proving he could command the screen just as powerful as he did the stage.
Truffaut said, "A man shaves, it's boring. But you film a man shaving carefully and then edit it and show it on the screen, it's interesting. Yet if you'd have been there normally, it's boring. But you film it, edit it, put it on the screen." Oh, you said, and that Prince understood that. And Prince getting on the silver screen expedited a few years of touring and several albums into making him a household name.
He wasn't just making music anymore. He was building a myth. Purple Rain was more than an album. It was a movement, a spiritual awakening set to guitar solos and velvet grooves. With every note, Prince told the world, this isn't just entertainment. This is liberation.
So there's different scenes, whether it's Prince being on stage, Prince trying to make it, Prince breaking up fights between his parents, where you totally forget his size, you totally forget the fact that has this, purple is his color, and he's wearing ruffles, and he's wearing velvet, and he's wearing necklaces. You totally forget the accoutrements. You just see him as being this, I don't know, I don't want to say Christ-like, but that's probably too over the top. He's powerful in a way that's not really human. And so the size and the circumstance, you're just so focused on who he is. And he's already an icon in that movie, and that movie sets him up to really go on to be Prince, the one named person that we know now.
As the decade rolled on, Prince continued to shape the sonic landscape with fearless evolution. He wasn't just influencing music, he was reshaping culture itself.
I think Prince was so smart that he knew you had to have a defined image, or he's just one of these guys. He knew that he had to be something to look at. You look at someone who's had a lengthy career like Cher. Cher understands Give the public something to look at. A lot of rock bands understand this, but more rock bands don't. Madonna understands this. Bob Dylan understands this, whether he'll admit it or not, which he never would. Give them something to look at that's different. Give them something that's weird, offbeat, whatever.
With his fluid sexuality, flamboyant fashion, and refusal to conform to gender norms, Prince stood as a symbol of androgynous freedom in a world that often demanded boxes. He challenged traditional notions of masculinity and identity simply by existing on his own terms, daring others to do the same.
And another thing about the symbol is he created it out of the male and female symbols. And that also summed up the androgyny. I mean, that's probably too mild a word. The androgyny that defined him as a performer. He was what we would call sexually fluid. You know, in other words, he was, he had a way of expressing his sexuality which crossed gender boundaries. And he went on to influence fashion. And this was, of course, at a time when he was doing this in the 1980s. This was at a late 70s in through the 80s. And this was at a time long before sexual fluidity and the whole debates about gender were as advanced as they are now. He was very much a trailblazer.
In many ways, he followed in the footsteps of glam rock pioneers like David Bowie and Mark Bolan, whose androgynous personas and theatrical style in the 1970s laid the groundwork for this kind of artistic self-expression. The influence of glam rock's gender-bending ethos is unmistakable in his aesthetic and attitude. His audacity didn't go unnoticed. Even among his peers, Prince's innovation left an unmistakable mark. Michael Jackson pushed his own creative boundaries in the wake of 1999 and Purple Rain. Madonna absorbed his genre-fluid style and confrontational confidence. Sheila E., mentored directly by Prince, found her own voice through his musical vision. Artists like Morris Day and the Time, Vanity 6, and Apollonia 6 were shaped entirely within the orbit of his genius. Even legendary acts like Stevie Nicks and Miles Davis admired him. Davis once calling Prince the only one who's doing something new. Prince wasn't just influencing the next generation. He was inspiring those already at the top of their game. But while others were chasing the sound of Purple Rain, Prince was already moving on. He had no interest in repeating himself. Around the World in a Day, released in 1985, bent psychedelic pop into something uniquely his own. And Parade, with its minimalist funk, and the infectious anthem Kiss, proved he could strip it all back and still sound like no one else. But in 1987, Prince delivered what many considered his masterpiece, Sign of the Times. A sprawling, genre-defying double album, it tackled everything from politics and spirituality to love, loss, and lust. On tracks like The Ballad of Dorothy Parker and If I Was Your Girlfriend, Prince blurred the boundaries between the personal and the surreal.
Sign of the Times was the first pop hit to make reference to AIDS.
But this year, behind the pride was fear. Fear of AIDS, the disease which is rampant in the homosexual community. So far, over 1,600 known cases, not in itself a high figure.
And he even recorded it first a year before it came out. But even after that year's wait, which nobody knew was a wait, it still was a breakthrough. That's how ahead of the times he was.
Sign of the Times wasn't just brilliant, it was prophetic. A sonic time capsule and a call to consciousness wrapped in a groove. By the end of the 80s, Prince wasn't just a pop star. He was a genre unto himself, untouchable, unpredictable, unstoppable. In an era of excess, he was the exception, using every platform, every sound, every note to push the limits of what music could be. Prince wasn't chasing the future. He was inventing it. By 1996, Prince was still releasing music, ambitious, layered, deeply personal. But the sound of the times had changed.
The new tastes of the 90s were grunge and gangster rap. And he did not compete in either of these areas, whereas he had some wonderful spoken passages in his records. They were not gangster rap. So suddenly he wasn't in the middle of the commercial road anymore, but he still turned out the material.
Prince's genre-blurring, kaleidoscopic funk pop felt out of step. Critics and fans alike began to wonder, had his moment passed? The unimaginable grief following the loss of their son created a quiet but widening rift between Prince and Mai-Tai Garcia. Though bound by deep love and shared artistic vision, the weight of sorrow proved too heavy to carry together. Over time, what had once been a passionate and creative union became marked by distance and pain. By the year 2000, their marriage had quietly come to an end. Less of a collapse than a slow, mutual letting go. It was a deeply personal loss for Prince, one he would rarely speak about publicly, but one that left an undeniable imprint on his life and art. Amidst this personal upheaval, Prince underwent a profound spiritual transformation. Introduced to the faith by friend and bassist Larry Graham, he began studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, eventually converting in the early 2000s. This change reshaped his worldview and his art.
Had a private side to him when I think it was in 2001, he converted and became a Jehovah's Witness. And there was a deeply spiritual side to Prince, and a deeply private side, as if he was seeking some kind of private solace and comfort to compensate for the public persona, this giant, this colossus of a brand that he had made of himself and that the world devoured with such eagerness.
He stopped swearing in songs and interviews, turned away from sexually explicit lyrics, and refused to perform some of his earlier provocative material. While some admired his spiritual commitment, others in the public found it off-putting, even confusing.
When you're told that Prince would sometimes just go around as a Jehovah's Witness, that restricts the possibilities. It's not to make a value judgment on Jehovah's Witnesses, but it's just saying, oh, he made a choice, and he let us know what the choice was. So, mystery over. We don't have any input into this anymore. So the person became different.
For fans who had embraced Prince as a symbol of sexual freedom and rebellion, the change felt like a departure from the artist they once knew. It was a period of transition. For the first time since his meteoric rise in the 1980s, Prince seemed like an outsider, not because he wasn't creating, but because the world wasn't listening in the same way. But Prince was never one to chase trends. He created them. And while the industry turned its gaze elsewhere, Prince kept building. Behind the scenes, a revolution was brewing, not just in sound, but in how music reached its audience. The rise of the internet was beginning to dismantle the traditional music business model. CDs and radio airplay were no longer the only path to the public. New avenues were opening, and Prince saw the potential long before most. For years, he'd been mocked for wanting to own his masters, dismissed as eccentric, even paranoid. But now, in the dawning digital age, his fight for artistic ownership no longer seemed strange. It seemed visionary. Though wary of the dangers of the internet, Prince was one of the first major artists to embrace its power. He launched NPG Music Club, a groundbreaking subscription-based website where fans could stream and download his music directly. This was years before Spotify, before Apple Music, before the concept of artist-led distribution became mainstream. It's like Radiohead, Frank Ocean, Tyler the Creator, Chance the Rapper, and Jay-Z would follow in his footsteps, choosing to bypass traditional models in favor of greater creative control. Jay-Z, for instance, in 2015 launched Tidal, a streaming platform owned by artists themselves, which echoed Prince's earlier creation of the MPG Music Club. Both initiatives aimed at empowering musicians and putting ownership back in their hands. Prince was no longer just a pop icon. He had become a pioneer of the digital music revolution. And while the charts may not have reflected his influence at the time, among his peers, Prince earned a renewed respect. He was an artist's artist, uncompromising, independent, and decades ahead of the curve. This quiet revolution, happening off stage and online, laid the groundwork for a spectacular return. As the world's understanding of music, technology, and ownership evolved, so too did its appreciation for Prince. The stage was slowly being set, not just for a comeback, but for a moment that would remind the world why he mattered. By the early 2000s, Prince had reclaimed his name and stood at the forefront of a rapidly evolving digital music landscape. In 2004, he made a triumphant return to the spotlight by opening the 46th Annual Grammy Awards alongside a rising star, Beyoncé. At the time, Beyoncé was emerging as a formidable solo artist, having recently released her debut album, Dangerously in Love, which would go on to earn her 5 Grammy Awards that very night. Their electrifying joint performance was more than just a showstopper. It symbolized a powerful bridging of musical generations. Prince, already an established icon with decades of groundbreaking work behind him, shared the stage with Beyoncé, a fresh voice destined for superstardom. Together, they delivered a dynamic fusion of funk, soul, and contemporary R&B that reminded audiences of Prince's lasting impact on popular music and his ability to inspire new artists. The moment was widely celebrated by critics and fans alike, reinforcing Prince's status as a timeless innovator who could seamlessly connect past, present, and future through his artistry. Shortly thereafter, Prince was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2004, a long overdue recognition of his profound impact on music and culture. His induction speech reflected his unique blend of humility and confidence, as he acknowledged the trailblazers who came before him, while affirming his own place among the legends. The highlight of the ceremony was his electrifying performance of the Beatles' While My Guitar Gently Weeps.
They are doing While My Guitar Gently Weeps. And for the first 3 minutes or so, Tom Petty and Jeff Lynne are trading lead vocals, and it's one of those usual superstar jams. And then Prince has a minute-long guitar piece, and he tears the roof off the sucker.
This performance has since been hailed as one of the greatest in Rock and Roll Hall of Fame history, cementing his reputation not only as a prolific songwriter and visionary artist, but also as one of the most extraordinary guitarists of his generation. It was a defining moment that reminded the world of Prince's unparalleled ability to transcend genres and captivate audiences with sheer artistry. In April 2004, Prince released his 30th studio album, Musicology, through a unique partnership with Columbia Records. This album marked a return to his musical roots and was both a critical and commercial success. It sold over 2 million copies in the United States alone, achieved double platinum status, and became his most successful album since 1991's Diamonds and Pearls. Musicology earned Prince 2 Grammy Awards, Best Traditional R&B Vocal Performance for the title track, and Best Male R&B Vocal Performance for Call My Name. Prince's innovative approach to album distribution further set musicology apart. He included a copy of the album with each ticket sold for his Musicology Live 2000 Forever tour, a strategy that not only boosted album sales, but also prompted Billboard and Nielsen SoundScan to revise their charting methodologies. The tour itself was a massive success, grossing $87.4 million and selling over 1.4 million tickets across North America. During this period, the Super Bowl halftime show had evolved into far more than a mid-game diversion. It had become a prestigious platform, a stage reserved for cultural royalty. Icons like Paul McCartney, the Rolling Stones, and U2 had graced the event, transforming what was once a novelty into a high-profile celebration of music history. These performances weren't just concerts. They were moments of global significance, where artists could speak to generations at once, uniting fans across genres, ages, and borders. The halftime show became a rare intersection of sport, spectacle, and sound. A singular moment where the past, present, and future of music converged under the brightest lights on television's grandest stage. In 2007, Super Bowl 41 took place at Dolphin Stadium in Miami Gardens, Florida. In the wake of a string of unforgettable halftime shows led by rock legends and pop icons, the NFL was looking for a performer who could not only meet the moment, but redefine it. Prince, now in the midst of a remarkable artistic and cultural resurgence, was the perfect choice. His reputation for delivering transcendent live performances and his cross-generational appeal made him an inspired selection. As the game day approached, weather forecasts predicted rain, a rarity for Super Bowl events.
It was drizzling that morning, and they called Prince up and said, it's raining, you pretty much have to go on anyway. And Prince said to the TV producer, it's a famous story in America, he says, make it rain harder.
During the show, rain did indeed pour down, creating a dramatic backdrop for Prince's set. Undeterred, he delivered a 12-minute performance that included renditions of Let's Go Crazy, Baby I'm a Star, and a cover of Foo Fighters' Best of You. The climax came with Purple Rain, performed amidst the downpour, with Prince's silhouette projected onto a massive screen, creating an iconic image that resonated with viewers worldwide. The performance was met with widespread acclaim, with many critics and fans considering it the greatest Super Bowl halftime show of all time. What set it apart wasn't just the flawless musicianship or electrifying setlist, but the way Prince transformed a potential disaster into a moment of pure spectacle. He didn't merely endure the rain, he made it a feature, turning the weather into a kind of divine collaborator. Music critics hailed the performance as a masterclass in showmanship and emotional intensity. It was reported that approximately 93 million viewers tuned in, making it one of the most watched programs in U.S. television history at the time, and solidifying Prince's place not just as a music legend, but as a cultural force capable of turning even a rainy football field into a stage for magic.
It's one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. People my age talk about Bob Dylan doing Like a Rolling Stone on that famous Royal Albert Hall concert. And people my age talk about John Lennon at the Royal Variety Performance saying to the Royal Box, people in the cheap seats, you can clap. Those in the more expensive seats just rattle your jewelry. And so on and so forth. But what beats Prince at the 2007 Super Bowl?
Less than a decade after that electrifying night in Miami, on the morning of April 21st, 2016, a call was made to 911.
Hi there. What's the address here? Yeah, we need an ambulance right now.
Okay, your cell phone's not going to tell me where you're at, so you need to find me an address.
Paisley Park. We're at Paisley Park.
You're at Paisley Park? Are you with the person who's...
Yes. It's Prince.
Prince had reportedly been battling flu-like symptoms in the days prior.
He was experiencing crippling pain in his hips, in his knees. It was from years and years in a lifetime of performing in heels and throwing himself literally around a stage, whether it was jumping off a piano or doing death drops on the stage. He did not do a show without those over-the-top theatrics, and he did not want to give his fans and audience a performance unless those were included.
And just a week earlier, his private plane had made an emergency landing after he lost consciousness mid-flight. Still, fans held on to the belief that he, of all people, was indestructible, too otherworldly, too vital, too unstoppable to fall. But then, the news broke.
We begin with the sad breaking news. He was possibly the most talented, charismatic, entertaining, influential. The purple one died today at the age of 57. The cause of death is not yet known. We do know that Prince was found unresponsive in an elevator at his estate in Minnesota, and that the last few weeks...
The world stood still.
It was shocking because it was not until after his death that we find out that the reason for his death was an overdose of pain medication, and it was pain medication he'd been taking for quite some time to deal with the issues he was having from really being a performer. So in a lot of ways, his perfectionism, his artistry, his striving to give his best is what killed him in the end, really.
A wave of disbelief swept across the globe as confirmation came. Prince was gone. The world had lost not just a musician, but a visionary. A cultural force who had never stopped evolving, never stopped creating, and never stopped challenging the system.
I just want this to be a hoax. I want this to be a hoax. And they said, oh, we made a mistake.
Facebook thinking that somebody was
made a mistake and we were not going to have somebody else that he found. Exactly.
And it wasn't somebody else.
It wasn't Prince Rogers Nelson. You hear me, girl? It wasn't him.
In the hours that followed, fans began gathering outside Paisley Park, leaving behind flowers, purple balloons, handwritten notes, and guitars as symbols of grief and gratitude. The building's walls became a living tribute, covered in purple, the color he had made sacred. Around the world, cities glowed in shades of violet. Skylines shimmered in tribute, awash in the color he made iconic. It was a global gesture of mourning and celebration for an artist whose light had touched every corner of the world. In Minneapolis, crowds filled the streets, singing his songs through tears. Radio stations played his music on a loop. Artists from every genre, from Stevie Wonder and Bruce Springsteen to Beyoncé and The Weeknd, paid tribute, each citing the same truth, that there had never been and never would be another like Prince.
I think Prince's legacy and influence is that he brought together, he was played on several different radio formats, so he brought together an America that has a rock station, has a funk station, has a station that plays reggae or country and western, and has a classical station. And Prince took at least 3, if not 4 of those 5 stations and put them together on one album. And we need more guys like that. Society, not just literally, but culturally, is segregated in America. And if the world has different pockets that can embrace him, Why can't America have its pockets that embrace him? He proved it was possible and that it could be done. And I wish there were more people like him. I wish there were more people that didn't just go through the barriers, that crushed the barriers.
When he died, I felt that the reaction was similar to that of the reaction to the death of David Bowie. It was an year in which there had been many prominent deaths. And for quite a few of them, people were sad and respectful. And I refer to artists like Glenn Frey of the Eagles or Maurice White of Earth, Wind and Fire, where people say, boy, they gave us a good time. We're very grateful. But with Bowie and then again with Prince, the reaction was personal. It was as if he had liberated a part of themselves in a way that went beyond music.
His death marked the end of a chapter, but not the end of his presence. Prince had redefined what it meant to be an artist, fiercely independent, genre-defying, and unafraid to speak truth through sound. From his battles for artistic control, to his pioneering use of the internet for music distribution, to that legendary Super Bowl performance in the rain, Prince had always moved ahead of the curve, pulling the industry with him. His legacy lives on in every artist who fights for their voice, every performer who dares to push boundaries, and every note that echoes with passion, protest, and power. The man who once asked if it could rain harder gave the world one last moment of thunder, a comeback that echoed through history.